It's day 2 of groups. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Hi. For those of you who are new here, this is Vision Denial. My name is Sam. We do videos about international League of Legends competitions, trends, and all the rest of that. And this is the daily sweepers, where I take a look at every day that Worlds has been playing and just kind of read over my notes in some dramatic fashion and add in some little extra sprinkling of thoughts in there. Couple of things to work ahead of time. I've got some thoughts at the end of the day, at the end of the videos, as per usual. Also, on the bottom over here, I will be doing I'll be putting in some highlight videos that have been made by the VCS, the Vietnamese League. Go check out their YouTube channel. They're fantastic. That league does some great stuff. They've unfortunately not been able to participate in international stuff for the last 2 years. So, show them some love if you can. That'd be great. Be a pal. And thank you again for all of those who come back to watch our videos. We really appreciate it. Just let us know in the comments what you think so far about Worlds and all the rest of that good stuff. And like and subscribe also if you enjoyed the video, if you're new. Without further ado... Yeah, because there's nothing else that's happened today that's like interesting other than the games themselves. So how about we start with T1 versus EDG. It's rare there are games like this where one team plays flawlessly and the other team plays with fervor and tenacity. It doesn't really happen all the time. Usually it's one or the other, never both. Edward Gaming managed to play perfect vision denial on top of standard vision control, allowing all setups for neutrals to be near incontestable. Wave manipulation may not have been their focus, but they answered it beautifully to counter T1's win conditions. And T1 on their part kept being proactive, looking for moments to counter any play and return themselves to a favorable position. Now, T1 have their work cut out for them. Given that EDG never allowed them to even think about setting up any siege, let alone any moments they could be picked out, save for that one time that allowed T1 to grab Baron and stall the game, T1 had never any chance to look into their win condition. They picked a siege composition that EDG never allowed to be opted into. And for the most part, EDG made sure that they had full control of vision so that they could never play around it. And I think it's a wonderful aspect of looking into how to approach your win condition with all the while denying your opponent's win condition. Now, T1 also had fantastic vision play, and were really picking their fights superbly, only ever losing to regimented and rigorous setup by Edward Gaming while on the back foot. This is one of the first games where both teams played great and it wasn't a stomp. It shows the highs of Edward Gaming have and their sheer dominance, especially given yesterday's game where it showed a lot of them. It shows them faltering a lot of the times and not having a whole grasp of what they're doing, despite the fact that their players were better role for role. And it also shows how T1 are always just like inches away from taking the game right underneath their nose. Now, a couple of things that really stuck out to me for this game, outside of the notes that I've written down here, was how much it looked as if T1 was losing on a consistent basis, and yet somehow it felt as if they were going to be, like, they had one team fight away from a comeback. And I think it's just due to the fact that, like, Team 1's composition thrives off of picks and snowballing the more and more that you get any leads. And Edward Gaming's composition just is fairly standard. more than anything else, given what we've seen in the meta right now. I don't think that 100 Thieves or Detonation Focus may have much of a chance, given the way I've seen these two teams play, to make it out of groups. It could be wrong. We've seen a lot of things happen today that might question that thought process. But hey, when you've got the chance, why not take your shot? But T1 seems to have an understanding of how the late game plays and how to really approach their win conditions, either ahead or behind. And Edward Gaming have a good sense of what their opponent's win conditions are and how to approach it in a way to minimize or completely deny their opponent's win conditions, all the while actually approaching their own in a way that is appropriate. And I think this game really exemplified that. With that, EDG, or Edward Gaming, wins and are now 2-0. T1 are now 1-1. Next, we have Rogue versus Damwon Gaming Kia. Well, what a way to start game 2. Anyways, Damwon, what was that about? You play a nearly flawless game only for Rogue to come around with a bunch of solo kills for Hansama. One team fight, and you're all out of sorts. So it's a good thing is you still had crazy good vision during the entirety of the game and neutral setups, and were always in control. Until individual players make egregious errors in their position. I think this is a weird game to watch, especially if you woke up really early in the morning and you're like, am I dreaming? Is this happening? Is the team that's tied for 15th, 16th in the ability to get out of groups really doing this against the old world champions? Well, it wouldn't be a first that the old world champions have weird things happening. I think so. This is something that's bizarre. The early game by Damwon, in and of itself, was near perfect. It is hard pressed to look at the way the game was playing and see that they were on their track for a perfect game. They had consistent vision that was always under control. They had control of the pacing at any given point, always securing the neutral objectives first. They had not lost a single kill or a single turret. And I think what happened that helped Rogue get back into the game is that Rogue had confidence to say, your comp doesn't do team fights. Ours does. What are you trying here? What are you doing in this position? Why are you allowing us to take a pick and do some fighting with you? Which didn't happen for the first 15 minutes or so of the game. Damwon didn't give them the opportunity to fight on their terms. They always picked a fight if it was beneficial, but they never did anything to allow them to be picked off until Ghost just randomly got caught out twice. Yeah. So good on them for punishing them. And I think it's something incredible. There's only so far that you can go with a punish without proper vision or wave manipulation. Because you'll find yourselves in a position that are similar to how Rogue had during the Elder fight. Because you can keep punishing and getting picks over and over and over again and come back, but if you're not doing any wave manipulation, you're not doing any vision control, you're just kind of doing picks, and you're gold's coming back, and you're not doing anything to invest it in a way that can help you get more advantages later down the line. You're gonna get that situation where I'm just gonna go in the back of this dragon pit over here. We don't even know where two of them are, and then whoop, I'm dead, and I can't smite. And that goes the game. And then they have Eldritch, and they finish the game because they were at some point 10,000 gold ahead of us. I do get a credit though, because Rogue did do a proper job of recognizing that Damwon didn't have a team fighting composition or skirmish composition, not in any way that like that's the goal of their win, like that's their win conditions in and of itself. They just didn't do a good job of like having more than one person be the carry in this case. Hansama really, really was doing work in this game. Damwon really needs to reevaluate how they're going to approach these drafts if they want to avoid this kind of blunder against Cloud9, because Cloud9 is probably going to do similar to Rogue. So I wouldn't count on them not just like trying everything to punish you. With that, Damwon Kia wins and are 2-0. Rogue are 1-1. Next, we have Paris Saint-Germain Talons versus Homo Life Esports. Look at them go! It was a really close game between these two teams with lots of question marks regarding their execution. Primarily, Homo Life drafted a team that requires a winning match state, top side, and bot side. Then deciding to focus bot and not play around for objective markers around there. I mean, they eventually did, but I think it's a consequence of like having to answer for more than anything else. So like they wanted to keep the driven going around. Now this bleeds into the next stage of the game where Homo Life keeps opting into bad fights after bad fights, and I think this is a theme now across this world where many of these teams have like caliber to be excellent, but they keep opting into fights that make zero sense given the context of the game state or like the map state or the game state and their win conditions. Now, we know that they're bad fights because, they don't have the control of the vision line or waves to be able to properly execute them. PSG, on the other hand, had a fairly rough early game, opting into the same kind of like approach to as many skirmishes as possible, enabled by, a teleport on jungle Talon. I have feelings about that. Pretty neutral feelings, more or less, but, still some feelings. But they're being really disjointed with where their focus should be, when in fact their focus should be completely on the top side. Fortunately for them, they course correct and keep that focus topside properly, setting up for more leads to snowball and taking the current leads to help bolster their position to the mid game where they shine. And Unified, my man, yes, coming up good in this game too for them. Fantastic. Just sniping shots left and right. Just when it needed to happen. Unfortunately, both teams had really poor drafts that let them have very limited win conditions and hurt their approach to the game, unfortunately. I think that it's entirely weird to look at this game and think that because I'm trying to like find words that really convey like this was a weird game. A lot of these games today are weird games, but this was a weird game. The teleport Talon really would throw people off for a loop, and I think it's got some merit to it. It is an idea that in on paper could work spectacularly to help alleviate any split pushing, which was 100% what Homo Life's draft was intended to do. Right? If you have more teleport options, then you can answer more teleport plays frequently and also put more people on one side of the map to contest the split pusher. It's fantastic. I don't think it worked on execution because it really limited the approach that Talon would have had the entire early game. And it really showed when they were trying to counter the tower dive that was happening on bot side. Moreover, I think Homolife still has that disjointed nature to them at this point, which is unfortunate because I hope that they really get out of this funk. This is a team that, like, despite the fact that no one expected them to come to Worlds, has shown that they do have the caliber to be here. They just aren't consistent with that proof. And I want to see that consistency shine through in group stage. And yes, it's just day 2, right? When everybody gets to their 4th day is when it really is important. But, like, you guys are halfway through your group stage matches. Or through your group stage days, right? Not through your matches, but through your group stage days. And this is where, like, day 1 is your grace period. Day 2, you have no grace period left. You have to take things in your own hands. And now, if you don't buck up, it's going to be worse. With that, PSG wins and are 1-1. Homolife 1-1. Next, we have Fnatic versus Royal Never Give Up. This is one of the clumsier games. Given the limitation of their drafting ability, they still avoid to draft something that enables their team's playstyle. For that, Fnatic are punished for their over-aggression frequently. Now, some positive before I go into anything else. They punished RNG's over-aggression equally well and are showing a lot of proactivity regarding the approach of the game. They should look into playing some simpler and more cohesive compositions and take things a little slower. RNG, on their hand, however, requires a look back at their many blunders and missteps here. Now, they played the vision game well, solid neutrals, good wave manipulation, but many unnecessary fights were taken frequently. Again, this seems to be like a recurring trend here. Blood was in the water this game, and instead of securing objectives properly, both teams opted into a style of play that feels fast. Like, it feels like a lot is happening, but it is so incredibly slow. Now, it's good on RNG to recognize it early enough and course correct in the last 12 minutes of the game. Otherwise, there would have been many question marks to contend with. This is a game that, like, left me very confused. A lot of these games, again, are still leaving me very confused. Because during the largest portion of this game, this is a very back and forth approach, and it seems very much like people are, like, going to expect Fnatic to win out this game just on the basis of RNG really opting into this nonsense. Which they shouldn't opt into this nonsense. They really shouldn't. Fnatic, on the other hand, I mentioned already, but, like, I don't know why they're not playing simpler compositions. Why are they playing compositions that require a lot of map movement, that require, like, some split pushing on a consistent basis, that don't have an ease of execution of team fighting, where, like, skirmishing is super dependent on the number of players that you have and not, like, the execution of abilities? Like, there is something to be said about press R to win compositions, right? Like, Cloud9 managed to do it on the play-ins, and it's super simple at the end of the day. If you have enough of them, especially given that you're still playing with, like, a new roster, like, you still have 4 of the 5 same players, but it's a new roster the second you put a 5th person in, because that dynamic, there's 5 whole new dynamics to account for. That's a huge portion of your dynamics. You can't not look at the situation and think simple. KISS, keep it simple, stupid. Or keep it super simple if you want to be really nice about it. I do think that this is going to probably be the last time RNG wigs out like this. They don't tend to keep a position where like, oh, this was a royal fuck up on our end. We're going to like slowly get better. Though they usually bounce back in statements. And given that, who were the last people they faced off? The last team they faced off was against PSG. You're likely to see them face Home Life in a fashion that is very reminiscent of being curb stomped, like so hard they'll see the curvature of the earth. Because this is not a team that just takes things lightly, as in like they don't slopping around in fights like this is not their style. Not in the slightest. They usually will straight up dominate you from start to end. So that's what I would be expecting tomorrow. Regardless, with that, Royal Never Give Up wins and are 2-0. Fnatic are 0-2. Next up, we have Cloud9 versus FunPlus Phoenix. To quote the great Skara, they're winning until they're not. Old school reference. Anywho, fuck, there's always one team like this. And seeing games like this is why I'm convinced this is the most competitive Worlds. And yet somehow C9 still showing they aren't fully there in terms of coordination. Let's start with FunPlus Phoenix, though. FPX. What's happening, guys? You're buying into random fights on a regular basis. Especially when your players, roll for roll, are doing way more. You choose to take random fights that you have no business taking. Good thing that you course correct halfway. Very similar fashion to RNG. Choosing your fights better. You're holding better wave management. You have solid vision play. Incredible neutral options. Making sure to slow down C9's huge lead you gave them. Doing this will help. You're stopping their win conditions and slowing down and slowly advancing your own at that point. Although it is harder to pull off with a composition with a very narrow window of opportunity for them to apply. It helps incredibly that Nuggery was in full carry force. Otherwise, you guys probably would have been screwed. C9. Incredible. Impeccable even. Early and mid game. Like, you're properly catching out mistakes from FPX. And the same as usual with your solid map movement and your great vision play. You're doing literally almost everything right. But it starts to fall apart when the mid to late game starts. And you'll split up more often, aim for split pushing, and really do everything to avoid fights and aim to do pincering instead. And time again, when you do that, you lose fight after fight. Stop pincering. You guys clearly are no good at it. I'm like, fuck, I don't know. Also, Perks, what are you doing? Trying to base race again. Like, you're trying to base race a Baron? No, okay. I get it. All right. It's a high reward play. But given how close, and in fact, in your favor team fights were when done as a 5-man unit, you could have defended and then ended the game. That's a significantly more likely winning play than doing a base race against a Baron as your team has only 60% of its damage because you're 40% of it. You have so much gold on your end. Defending 5v4 with none of its wave clear because you're all of its wave clear. Shit. I don't get so mad as much as watching Cloud9 play. Fuck. Like, you can look at some emerging region teams and go like, that's fine. Like, it's an emerging region team with like only so much experience in terms of the international stage, right? But Cloud9, you guys, like, I know you guys are just like a practically completely new roster, but all of you, legitimately all of you, have international competition experience. And I'm here thinking, and I don't think this is the case. I think Perks doing this kind of stuff literally sabotages your attempts at winning games. And it doesn't make me feel like you're trying, which I know for a fact is not true. It looks like that, but I know it's not true. So I don't know. Stop. With that, FPX wins and are 1-1. C9 are 0-2. Next, we have Detonation Focus Me versus 100 Thieves. A little messy, but it's still a win. Detonation have a solid, simple draft and start off to the game with some strong movement and a good idea how to approach their win condition. And as the game moves on, their bot lane and jungle just could not keep up with 100 Thieves. And it started to trickle down into other aspects of their game. Now, DFM didn't just take this lightly. They would aim to make proactive plays and aim to have some neutral setups, but they kept opting into bad fights and not taking necessary steps to secure the leads that they needed. Again, more bad fights. You don't need to keep opting into some bad fights, guys. 100 Thieves, on the other hand, look coordinated and focused with only like really brief moments of scattered play, primarily due to Arya's Zoe, who was very effective. Evie and Arya were playing incredibly well this game. It's just unfortunate that the vast majority of their map at this point was just collapsing in some places. But 100 Thieves have some solid neutral play, fantastic vision, and a stellar Nami played by Huhi. Somebody on Twitter mentioned that like it looked like Huhi was the first support player so far at Worlds to look like he's played the champion before. And you know what? I would be down to agree. And I have a separate rant to do at the end of the video regarding, enchanters in the Worlds meta, but we'll get there. It became super clear that DFM were fighting a mountain. And I think that they weren't clean at closing out the game. 100 Thieves, at this moment, it seemed like as if they were super uncomfortable or super comfortable despite their lead. They were super uncomfortable despite their lead. To me, though, that indicates that they were uncertain as to what their win conditions were and proceeded to play as standard as you can until they had enough resources to have a very low chance of failure close to finish out games. If they can show a better understanding of their win conditions and back it up with that kind of coordination again, I think it would spell some pretty good things for 100 Thieves. It does not 100% convince me they would get out of the groups, but it would help me be convinced that they have a chance at beating one of the top teams. Given that, I do still think that it is a little messy. It looked like Detonation Focus Me had an understanding of what their win conditions were a lot better than 100 Thieves, but they didn't execute on it as well. And unfortunately, it just looked like for 3 of the 5 roles, 100 Thieves had better coordination and as such were better for those roles at that point. And it doesn't matter if your solo laners aren't contributing as much as your opponents if you as a whole team contribute more than your opponent's team, regardless of how good their solo laners are, then it doesn't matter, really. I do want to commend that Detonation Focus Me are trying to play simple. They're trying to focus on what is easy to execute and properly approaching it that way. But they haven't done anything yet that wows in the same way that we were wowed during the play-ins groups. And I know for a fact that they have the ability to pull some very interesting stuff. And let's see. Hopefully they can try something interesting against they're playing EDG tomorrow, right? That's who they're playing. Yes, they're playing EDG tomorrow. So maybe they surprise us. With that, 100 Thieves wins and are 1-1. Detonation Focus Me 0-2. Next, we have Mad Lions versus Gen G. Now this is more like the Mad we were expecting. Frankly, this game took way too long. And part of that was some smart map movement and neutral setup by Gen G. The other part was slow, methodical, and overly cautious approach from Mad. We can also talk about the little missteps done by individuals on Gen G's side that Mad Lions capitalized on. But they weren't much of a big factor through the overall game. Especially if you're given a team of Gen G's caliber where that could have happened at any given point, they usually would have been able to rebuff and come back. Now, honestly, the biggest factor here is Mad taking full advantage of a skirmish composition that excels in the jungle and around neutral objectives and forcing the issue at every opportunity, all the while Gen G is opting into the fights when they should be avoiding them, given how their composition operates. Despite the leads that Mad had, though, it was frustrating to see the amount of times they would allow Gen G to get some sort of foothold back into the game. Mad needs to learn how to control the pace and how to properly close out games. Gen G also took advantage of their poor vision play. Mad had to approach some of these fights with some disadvantage when there shouldn't have been. Now, at the end of the day, this game is the biggest indicator of how close Group D is, and it's just like how any slip up, no matter how small the slip up is, that could make a huge difference between making quarters and going home. Now, I think my notes succinctly put it, it's that it's really hard to look at this game and you start looking at the performances that BDD had during the laning phase and how topside was being taken advantage. It looked very much like Mad was in control for the vast majority of this, and they very much were. I think caveat being they weren't control. They were controlling the pace of the game. They weren't controlling per se map. How's it called? The map state very well. I think that all four Mad's very intelligent approach to how to do team fights and their very conscious approach to their win condition, that the overly cautious nature of things really limited their ability to properly set up vision or set up their neutral objectives in ways that would prevent their opponents from having little inklings of ways to get back. And Gen G took advantage of that, and I mentioned that in the notes here. This leads me to think that, like, Gen G really take advantage of mistakes more than anything else, and that shouldn't be the case, especially if it's from a team that is of the expected caliber of Gen G. But, hey. What was I going to go for? That was the expected caliber of Gen G. But hey, it's almost as equally rough to see Mad Lions, who also had a particular caliber to them that people were holding them up to. Especially when the other two teams had zero expectations coming from them. Nobody expected Rogue to do very well, and nobody expected Fnatic to do well after the announcement. But Mad was expected to do well from the get-go. Not conditionally, from the get-go. And the fact that they haven't gotten a grasp on how to properly close out these games in a way that is not, like, really risking it gives me some warning signs, some warning bells to look out for. Mad wins and are 1-1. Gen G are 1-1. Next, with the last game of the day, we have Team Liquid versus LNG Esports. God, this was a boring game to watch. So much you blink and boom, LNG has a lead almost on a pure 15 minutes of laning phase. God, I talked about the meta becoming an extended laning phase with Connor, but jeez Christ. On a picket stick. Now, LNG did everything right for this game, and Team Liquid let them do everything right this game. Both teams opted into a passive extended laning phase, even though it straight up does not benefit Team Liquid at all. And LNG opted into playing Drakes, while Team Liquid opted into a handshake for Heralds, only for them to do almost nothing with the Heralds. And then just allow LNG to do Drake stacking for fucking forever. This was like a really frustrating game to watch, and not because, like, oh, you're expecting one team to do better than the other. And no, they're both teams are playing like a boring chess match, but Team Liquid made the wrong move from moves 1 through 5, and they have to play it out because the best move requires them to play it out until they lose. Yeah, it's just rough to talk about fumbles for this game, because when the fumble is mostly inactive play, that was the mistake. Because all that ends up happening is that when Team Liquid realize like 17 minutes into the game or something, that like they should probably be more proactive and get something, it was straight up too late. There was like a 3,000 gold lead. You had 0 tempo advantage, none of the wave manipulation, really shoddy vision during the entire process. And it's not like this was because Team Liquid wasn't doing the things that they needed to do to properly do that. No, it's just that they were opting into like safe optimal play. And safe optimal play literally only benefited LNG this game. I don't want to really extend my thoughts regarding this game too much. I think that LNG, though, good on you for recognizing that Team Liquid were doing something utterly ridiculous. Just absolutely bonkers. And to roll with it. And then whenever they tried to be aggressive, you answered properly because you had already done the setups properly. Good on you guys. You did great. Fantastic. Yeah. Short thoughts and notes. And now Group D has a 4-way tie going into day 3. Nice. With that, LNG wins and are 1-1. Team Liquid 1-1. So, my thoughts about the day, eh? Well, God, where do I start? A lot of these games were cool. I really liked a lot of, except for the last game. The last game sucked, but a lot of these games were really cool. They had a better chance of explaining and showing some of the interactions a lot of these teams have, and what are the supposed expected power rankings, so to speak. I do greatly appreciate the what's it called? The more accepted nature of the state of the meta, like a higher emphasis on enchanters. And I'm going to talk about that real quick. The fact of the matter is that I understand that a lot of people seem to have this visceral hatred towards Yumi and enchanters in general. To that I say, your guys are a bunch of fucking cowards. And yes, I do mean that in as aggressive manner as I mean. These are way better games, 100%, significantly better games to watch than when we had way more engaged supports going on for the entirety of the tournament. And it's not brain dead play. It just doesn't look flashy. It's not a micro play, it's a macro play. You should probably think on a macro objective. And I think it's really telling who are the ones that are like complaining about this, because there's like the state of the game is as is. You're on a professional level at this point. And as shitty as it is to hear, it is still part of your job to play the game. Now, I can understand on a basis like if the entire scene itself was based off of just a casual nature and people were doing it just for the hell of it, for like fun, first and foremost, and not for like money or not for a competitive edge, you're trying to compete. You're not trying to like overthink it. The simplest composition right now and the best compositions right now tend to include enchanters. And I think it's just really weird for like people to just be really negative about the situation right now. This isn't like Ardent Censor meta. Hell, even Ardent Censor meta, people were just not creative enough to look into a situation that used to beat it. And then Leona came into the scene in the quarterfinals. That Misfits versus SKT, that is what happened. Misfits brought out the Leona to counter the Ardent Censor meta. This is not the same kind of situation, right? This is not like exclusively enchanters are in the meta or exclusively Yumi's in the meta. Yumi has made a very small presence so far, and nobody complained about a Moo. And that was awful to watch. But in no shape or form am I going to be like, it is the worst thing. It was awful to watch because people weren't doing it properly. And in the same vein, if you're not going to do these enchanters properly, don't. Figure out a way around it. Anywho, rambling over, I think that the current state of the meta is cool. I do. It's going to change. The game changes all the time. But I think the current state of the meta is cool. It allows a lot more flexibility, and it has a lot more options in terms of summoner spells. This is the first time I've seen where, like, most of the, like, there's almost no flash there's no flash on 3 of the 5 members of a team. That was the, God, I had it right here. Where is it? It was Paris Saint-Germain had no flash on 3 members of their team. What a world! That's in a in a game that's been dominated by one summoner spell for so long. That's a great and refreshing time. I don't know. I'm just saying. Otherwise, I think that right now it's really exciting to look at a lot of the other teams. Group A has been shaken up a little bit. I don't think that it'll stay shaken up that way, but It's good to see that like Rogue and C9 are not taking things lying down, that they're actually trying to contest in a way that is significant and like noteworthy. I'm happy to see that, like, the same thing with Group C. Like RNG would have been usually been the like, all right, cool, we're just gonna casually just stomp on everybody. Ooh, or we're gonna just stomp on everybody. And then Fnatic said no, despite not having our full roster, we're still gonna compete. And there's so much that I appreciate from this day, other than the last game that was slow as hell for no reason. Really appreciated it. And I hope that we get more games like this tomorrow, because honestly, I want the games to reflect the kind of hype and expectations that we had of this being like, this is the competitive year. Yeah, man, that's pretty much it. You guys let me know what you think in the comments below. What do you think about the current meta situation? What was your favorite game so far out of the 2 days of groups? And your total thoughts so far. Do you think your expectations of the different teams have changed after day one or not? Who knows? You do. Let us know. And again, we really appreciate all of you who watch. It's fantastic. And we hope that you keep enjoying these videos. Like and subscribe if you do. And I'll be seeing you tomorrow.